Hello and welcome to yet another one of these videos where I go through every month of 2021 and talk about the games I played in that month. Today we are going through October and spoiler alert, no horror games surprisingly. But anyway, we have 6 games to talk about, well technically 7, but anyways. We have Valiant Hearts The Great War, Far Cry 4, Hitman, Wolfenstein The New Order, Tearaway Unfolded, and the Telltale Batman games. So, without further ado, let's get on to the first game, shall we? And first up, we have Valiant Hearts The Great War. Now, this is an interesting game for me, because when you're using the general setting of a war, more specifically a war that's happened in real life, you're more so going to use the Second World War, because that's more interesting, apparently, and more things have happened, and more opportunities, I guess. But Valiant Hearts The Great War does two things differently than any game that I've seen set during a war. Number one, the most obvious thing, it's set during World War One, which I feel is a more interesting atmosphere, allows for more interesting characters and whatnot. And number two, it's set from different perspectives. That is, every character that you play as, and there's 4 of them, are all from different backgrounds. So we have soldiers from France, soldiers from Germany, soldiers from America. You know, the perspective is always changing, and I think it's really nice we got that. And on its own, Valiant Hearts The Great War is certainly interesting, you know, and I think it's because of that it really has its own unique feel to it. Like, you're really looking into I guess an aspect of the First World War that not many people really look into, you know, because usually in war games you're only going through one character's perspective and only one country's perspective, whereas here, as I said before, you're going through 4. Now, on its own, as I said before, it's alright. In terms of gameplay, it's alright. When I said on its own, that's not what I meant. But on its own, it's alright. It's an alright puzzle game, and it's really good. It makes you invested in the characters, and it makes you so invested that the ending to it is a real gut punch, you know? And also, there's a dog in it, and I named him Chorizo. So that being said, that was Valiant Hearts The Great War. Let's get on to the next game, shall we? And next up, we have Far Cry 4. Now, just for some context, back in June, I played Far Cry 3, and I loved the shit out of it. So I wanted to play Far Cry 4 for a while now, because I can have the habit of just playing things in order, as like most people. But anyway, people were saying, you know, lower expectations, it's not going to be as good as Far Cry 3. And to an extent, they're kind of right, but to an extent, they're kind of wrong, because, well, I don't think it's as good as Far Cry 3. It's kind of as good as Far Cry 3. That doesn't make sense. Basically, I think Far Cry 3 is a smidge better than Far Cry 4. So I do think the comparisons to Far Cry 3 are really apt, because it's basically the same thing, you know? Well, not really the same thing. There's different settings, different characters and whatnot. But you're doing the same things in terms of game mechanics, you know? You're shooting random people who are bad guys, you're raiding outposts, you're capturing radio towers and whatnot, and I find that just kind of repetitive, you know? But if we're ignoring the fact that, you know, it's in every Far Cry game, that mechanic, if you're ignoring that fact, it's a pretty good game, you know? And of course, one thing I like about it is the setting, where it's set in a hidden region of Nepal, and I find not many games go for that and whatnot. And shooting is alright, you know, capturing enemies and killing them, I guess, is fun. The takedowns are especially fun. Far Cry 4 is just fun. And speaking of fun, we gotta talk about what the main selling point is of any Far Cry game: the villain. And in Far Cry 4's case, that took me long to say it, we gotta talk about Pagan Min. Now, who do I like more, Vaas or Pagan Min? They're really apples and oranges to me, but depending on what I might say, I'm gonna say my favorite is probably Pagan Min or Vast, I'm not sure. But basically what I'm gonna get is Pagan Min is the best thing about Far Cry 4. I really wanted to continue to the end because I wanted more Pagan Min. My only real complaint about him is that he doesn't appear much, you know? It's just a couple cutscenes, couple of radio messages, and nah, we're done. And that's a shame because he's the only interesting character, you know? He's the only one I want to keep playing through, you know? Our main character RJ isn't really that interesting. The main conflict between Amita and Sabal, that isn't very interesting to me. And it's just a shame that they really just went out with all this good, interesting stuff and out the door with it. But anyway, as I said before, I like Far Cry 4. Just a smidge less than Far Cry 3, but I love the neat little details, especially love Pagan Min, and I'm going on for too long, so let's just wrap this up and get on to the next game, shall we? And next up is Hitman. Now, going into this game, I had high hopes. I hear non-stop praise about the other games, Hitman 2, Hitman 3, those are the only games I know about. And from the premise, it seems interesting, it certainly looks pretty good, and I even have a friend who's a big fan of the Hitman series. It's just such a shame that, despite everything, I'm just not the biggest fan of it. Like, I think mainly, the one thing I do not like about it is the gameplay. Because, you know, it sounds competent, the premise is interesting, it looks pretty good. I mean, just look at these, even though this is a trailer. But, yeah, I don't really like the gameplay, you know? Like, I do know that it's trying to do something different, you know? It's trying to have variety in the stealth genre, I guess. Is stealth genre a genre? I do not know. And you gotta appreciate, you know, because there's different settings, there's different ways to kill your targets and whatnot. It's just such a shame that, for me, it just doesn't work. Like, the controls barely make any sense to me. It doesn't feel that good to control. And again, like, I'm really being a dead horse here. The main flaw I have with it is its controls, because I like the premise, I like how it looks, I like what it's going for. The problem is, I just don't like it. I don't think I'll check out the other Hitman games, because if I'm not interested from the first one, then I just don't see any point bothering. But let's go on to something more positive. Let's get on to the next game. And next up is Wolfenstein: The New Order. Now, I really want to play this game based on its premise alone, where you're fighting in a world where the Nazis won World War II, and that seems like such a really dark premise, and believe me, it is. And I just really like the setting and whatnot, and it's got such potential for some great story. What I didn't expect, however, was a balls-to-the-walls action shooter, but then I remembered it was Wolfenstein, and this was... Well, while I was playing it, I genuinely thought, because it's made by Bethesda, and because it was released in 2015, I thought it was essentially the blueprint for Doom 2016, which is a game I really like. But on its own, it's a good game, you know? Shooting feels alright, and, you know, satisfying is a word I will use. I do not know how to use words. The combat and action is satisfying. I do like how it takes a kind of movie approach, where in the cutscenes, like, in contrast with some other shooter games, you're viewing them in third person. And I think that's very interesting, because it allows for a more cinematic experience and whatnot. But I kind of found Wolfenstein at some times to be kind of balls to the walls, really, because it's mainly just on paper it sounds like the, you know, generic premise for a first-person shooter game that you'd find in, like, a parody, like, say, oh, you're a Big Balls McGinnis, and you have to save the world from Nazis, and you fuck a girl afterwards after you kill a guy and whatnot. Because on premise, it just sounds, well, not stupid. I think the main word to say is, if I can think of it, and I can't, that's gonna haunt me. But anyway, Wolfenstein kind of feels like a parody, but on its own, it's a damn good game because it, as I said before, it kind of really does remind me of other games like it, like, you know, the Doom series, and harkening back to another old school shooter series, Duke Nukem, which I'm saddened that Duke Nukem Forever is gonna forever taint the series, and we're never gonna get a new Duke Nukem game. And I'm just going off the rails here. Basically, Wolfenstein is a pretty good game, and will I check out its sequel, The New Colossus? Maybe. But anyways, as I think we're done here, and I think we're done here. That was dumb. Anyways, next review. And next is Tearaway Unfolded. Now, it may seem kind of weird going from Wolfenstein The New Order, which was, you know, a game about what if the Nazis won World War II, to this game, which is a cutesy little fun platformer game in the style of paper cutouts. But you know what? That's not to discredit Wolfenstein or Tearaway, because they're both good games, Tearaway especially. It's just hard not to really appreciate this game's charm. And it really implements the paper, not paper aspect, that's not the right way to say it, I guess paper art style, in a sense. Basically what I'm getting at is, when you look at it, you're not gonna really confuse it for something else, because Tearaway is Tearaway. You're expecting a cute little fun adventure game, and you're gonna get that, you know, with multiple twists and turns and a whole lot of creativity. One thing I didn't like about it, and I think it's the only thing which I didn't really like, was how the controller was really used. This is kind of hard about context. Basically, in the game, there are multiple times where you're forced to use your controller, in my case for DualShock, and, or really in any case for DualShock, and use it for motion, use it for drawing on the touchpad. The problem is, I don't know whether it's my controller specifically, but it's really just, it was not responsive at all, which I kind of feel was going to be a bit apparent, because Tearaway was originally a game for the PS Vita, and so the jump onto PS4 is going to be a little bit rocky. But really, that was mainly the only thing I didn't really like about Tearaway, because on its own, it's a really good game, and I think many people should check it out. Also, it has the person who voices Daddy Pig as a tree god. So, with that being said, that's all I have for Tearaway Unfolded. Let's get on to the final game, or should I say final games, shall we? And the final games that we'll talk about today are the Batman Telltale games. Now, I know this is only showing footage from The Enemy Within, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So first thing I want to start off with is the original Batman Telltale game. And, you know, I was interested because it's a Telltale game. It's got to be at least passable, you know? Like, even Telltale games which I don't really like that much, like, say, The Walking Dead: A New Frontier, that was okay. And I want to see if they did something different and something unique with a new property, this time being the Batman property. And they did alright, you know, specifically with the first game, since that's what we're talking about here. Like, all the characters were just okay, all the settings were okay, the twists and choices you have to make were okay. That's really just the main thing to say about the original Telltale Batman game, okay. Well, there is one thing about it, and it's my main gripe with it. It's so goddamn glitchy, like, especially in the early episodes, there's like 100 glitches, like, in every single episode. Like, sometimes different voice lines wouldn't appear, sometimes backgrounds wouldn't appear, sometimes, like, even a part of the character's model, like their hair, wouldn't even exist. And that's just a few glitches, you know? I'm not even counting the technical ones, which weren't on screen, but anyways, I've ranted on about the original. Let's talk about the better game, The Enemy Within. Now, in contrast to the original, I really like The Enemy Within. I think it's one of the best games Telltale have made, like, up there with, say, the Walking Dead games, like, well, you know, the first one and the final season, because those are the two great Walking Dead games anyways. And with it, I feel it needed... I feel with the original Batman game, it needed more colour. Like, it was very dull, very grey, very black, just kind of boring to look at. And with this one, the introduction of some classic Batman villains like Mr. Freeze, Harley Quinn, Joker, Bane, all that. You know, it really added the much needed color, and the impact of your choices actually felt, you know, like they made an impact in the game. And that's the one thing Telltale tries to do, you know, make your choices both matter and not matter at the same time. And again, I just really like it. I really like the implementation of John Doe, who, as some people may know, became the Joker. And I really like how you have to be really careful, otherwise he's going to turn into a villain if you're not careful enough. If you slip up, bada bing, bada boom, he's the villain now, just like in my playthrough of the game. But anyway, I do think it's one of the best Telltale games. Like, if you haven't played it, go check it out. Don't check out the original, because I don't think that's as good, but the Any Move In, do check it out. And that is all the games that I played in October. Again, sorry there was no horror games, but the main reason for this is that this is the start of just a bunch of games which I bought and I still haven't gone to. I've got like 10 games at the time of recording which I still have to go through. So expect a lot of baggage in the coming months. So with that being said, thank you for watching, and if you want to get to the next month, just wait, but if you want to check out the previous months as a playlist. But anyways, thanks for watching and bye.